A final chapter of moving testimony from the dark days of this century, now on BBC One. It's autumn 1940 and the bombing is relentless. Finest hour.
September 1940. The war comes home to Britain. Civilians are now in the firing line.
I think that was really the first time that I felt that fear.
Scared. Bloody scared. All I was thinking of my dad. Was my dad all right?
I mean, the whole east end of London went up in smoke. It was quite traumatic.
On the afternoon of September the 7th, Hitler's Air Force begins its assault on London. 900 German aircraft reach the city almost unopposed. Their target is the biggest commercial centre in the world, the London docks.
It was on the Saturday afternoon. The planes come over and they bombed and bombed and bombed it. When it started to get dark, all you could see over down Surrey Docks way, I don't know if you know it, was all a big red glow. We didn't know where to go. There was no shelters provided, none. None, no shelters provided. None, no shelters provided. My dad said, we'll go under Abbey Street Arch. And we went under the arch and we sat on the pavement. All the wet was coming down the wall. And I remember one woman, Mrs. Parr, she's an old neighbour of ours, and I laugh about it there. She prayed to Hail Mary all night. I said, oh, Mrs. Parr, for goodness sake. She started doing a Hail Mary. Well, that's what they believe in, isn't it? But other people, they just sat there. I don't think we slept the first couple of nights under there. I can't see how we could have slept. It was so noisy.
Hitler is convinced that once the British people see their capital city in flames, they will lose the will to resist. No one knows if he is right. Never before has the population of a major city faced round-the-clock bombing. London's emergency services are overwhelmed. Firemen are called in from all over the country. Ted Wilson, a 16-year-old volunteer from Coventry, must ask for permission to travel south.
I went and asked Mother, and she said, oh, go on. And while I was getting into my uniform, my mother, she made a great big pile of sandwiches, I'll never forget, great big pile of sandwiches for us to eat on the way. And there was only lard, pure lard sandwiches with a little sprinkle of salt on, and away I went. And I said to somebody, where are we going to? And they did say, we're going down to Silvertown on the docks in London.
In fighting the fires, 16 firemen were killed, 11 by high explosive bombs and 5 by falling walls.
It was horrific. You've got the bombs dropping down, sometimes in the fires that you're actually trying to put out. And the sky didn't exist. That was a blackness. I've seen walls fall down and firemen being trapped. I saw a policeman die, and you could hear the shrapnel, not from the bombs, but from the shells bursting up above and sprinkling down just like rain. There's no doorway or alleyway for a fireman to go into. He has to stand there and take what's coming down.
EastEnders seek refuge anywhere with solid walls. In Bermondsey, an old billiard hall becomes an emergency shelter.
There was a little bit of music there. And of course, all the young people wanted to go there, didn't they? And I said to my mum and dad, instead of going to Butler's Wharf, let's go in the billiard hall. We tried to get in the billiard hall, but it was full up. And all the people in the billiard hall was all the girls I went to school with, all my age, 18, Lily's friends and all that. And when we come out, the bomb had fallen through in the billiard hall and exploded inside and blew all to pieces. I mean, they didn't even bury the people, they couldn't even sort them out. They couldn't. Shocking. I don't know if it was Lily Williams or Rosie Williams. She got killed, and girl Bat and another girl, all young people, 17 and 18. People were dying all over the place, oh.
In the first 4 days of what's become known as the Blitz, 1,500 people die. Nazi bombers dominate the skies. The RAF makes little impression.
We just did our damnedest to stop them getting there, but we couldn't stop them completely. On those first two London raids, we'd taken off quite late and we tended to be underneath the raid. We hadn't got to altitude, let's put it this way, before they arrived. So we were fighting at a disadvantage. We were fighting uphill instead of down. And the third London raid, I climbed like stink from when I took off, and I managed to get above them. And that occasion I got a bomber quite happily. But the poor Londoners, I really felt sorry for them.
Bombs are also falling on the centre of government.
There was a terrific air raid one night, and Churchill had been giving a dinner party, and he thought about Mrs. Landemar, his cook, in the kitchen. Well, the kitchens at number 10 had these vast windows, and he went into the kitchen and insisted that Mrs. Landemar and the assistant cook come into the shelter with us, which was just as well, because the next morning that whole kitchen was covered in shattered glass. They would have been killed easily.
The atmosphere inside number 10 is bleak. Some of Churchill's ministers fear that Hitler may be right, that Londoners will break under the strain.
We went about our business sort of rather numbed inside, not recognising the danger, trying not to recognise it. We certainly felt in our hearts that we were going to be reduced to rubble. We felt this is it.
While Hitler's Air Force batters London, his submarines intensify their attacks on British merchant ships in the North Atlantic. They are essential to Britain's survival, carrying half of the nation's food and raw materials. The Royal Navy herds ships together into convoys and tries to protect them.
It was a complete cock-up, most of it, you know. We brought the convoys through, but more by luck than judgment, if you know what I mean. The German captains were red hot. They knew exactly what they were doing, and our people didn't. We hadn't got a strategy to take on U-boats.
Ian Nethercott is already a veteran. 4 months ago, his destroyer was sunk at Dunkirk, and he was shot by a German fighter plane. He is 19 years old.
At that time, we could only have about 4 or 5 escorts to a convoy of 40 ships. Sometimes in the night, there'd be an almighty bang in the middle of the convoy. You'd see lights and flares and things going off, but you ploughed on. The convoys always kept going. Imagine every night when I turned in my bunk, the torpedo slams into me now, I'm already trapped down below. There's no way I can get out from here, I'll just stay there. and go down in my bunk. And in the morning he'd make a count, you know, and there might be one missing or two missing, you know. And you couldn't pick up people often, and the seas were so rough, and if they weren't in boats or anything, if they were just in the water, you just had to leave them. If you got an ASDIC ping and they were right over the top of it, you still went in and dropped your jet charges right amongst them and blew them all to pieces. And there was one or two occasions where these poor buggers, you know, thought that they were going to be picked up and they were all waving, and the ship just ploughed on straight through them and fired their charges. And, you know, you killed all your own blokes. You've got to sacrifice some for the good of the lot, you know. And they knew it, you know, if you swept past them. I remember there was 2 or 3 of these blokes and we were speeding up to get in with the convoy, and we had to leave them in the middle of the Atlantic. They got life belts on, but they were going to die. And this bloke realised it, and he was shouting out, "Taxi, taxi, taxi," just taking the mickey, like, you know, he knew he was going to die, he knew we couldn't stop. And all you could hear in the distance was him shouting out, "Taxi, taxi," and it faded away. And it made hard men weep.
Thousands of EastEnders are now bombed out of their homes. Many trek into the countryside and sleep in fields. In Silvertown, close to the Royal London Docks, the local council gathers people together in South Hallsville School.
All those under the viaduct, they were to go to South Hallsville School, where there would be buses to take them to a safe area. Right, so we all makes our way round to this place. Well, we gets there, we're all on the corridors and everything, we're all sitting there waiting to be shifted. We have corned beef sandwiches. Then one woman says, "How do you want your eggs tomorrow?" It was Mrs. Mack. "How do you want your eggs tomorrow? Hard or soft?" You know, jokingly. "Have you got enough sweet coupons? We can share them."
The promised buses fail to arrive. Instead, the corridors and classrooms quickly fill up as hundreds more EastEnders are packed into the school.
That's the lack of experience what they had. You see, you took people down there thinking they was going to be safe. You left them there.
For 2 days and nights, the homeless families wait for transport, just yards from the docks.
They put people, there's a factory there, there's a Lamps of Paragon, and there's the glassworks there. I mean, aerial photo, I mean, they could look down, they could see there must have been some sort of factory or effort or wherever it was, you know.
Well, son, 10 minutes to 4, there was this vivid flash. I've never seen so many brilliant colours in my life. The doors of the schoolrooms came across and dashed over the top of us. Kids screaming, women screaming, we were all crying. All I was thinking of, my dad, was my dad all right? He was shouting out, "You all right, Ada?" And then he's saying, "Maud, are you all right?" That was his stepmother. Yeah, he said, "Where's the old man?" She said, "I don't know." And it seemed eternity, but it must have been about an hour, hour and a half. They came round with these lights. They started digging us and pulling us out.
We was told it was an aerial torpedo or a mine. aerial mine, but when I see it, it sliced one half of it, and all whatever's down, it buried everybody down in it, into the crater. That's where they were. Boats were getting them out of the crater.
Then this one was saying to the air raid warden, "Oh, it's Jimmy. That's him with the brown jersey. He's got his scout medals on it." So they've dug and then all they got is, "Oh, no Jimmy." There was so many killed in that bloody school.
On the rescue side of it, those what weren't in complete part, what bits and pieces they could get hold of, which was understandable. They was we used to have rubble baskets, and they was using them baskets for whatever they could, whatever they could find, pick up. There was people there. There was a lot more people than what they said are buried in there. Eventually they realised that the best thing to do was to cover that lot up. And I think they did. Yeah. There's no telling how many people are buried in there even to this day,
Mr. Winston Churchill goes down the London River to inspect the situation in Dockland. Much of the damage has been repaired, all facilities are available, London and its docks are still carrying on.
The Prime Minister's upbeat performance hides intense official concern about morale in the East End.
The Premier with his wife makes a big tour of inspection and encourages everyone by his inspiring presence.
Not everyone is inspired by Churchill's visits or by his oratory.
Well, that old Churchill say, finest hour. Yeah, who gets get your missus and kids and buried and or knocked out? What would you say? You've got finest hour, all right. So, well, I wouldn't be prepared, a bit more prepared for all this.
Shelters were disgusting. Disgusting, the shelters. The dirt in it, dirt, and the smell and the stink. And people scratching themselves with scabies, and all things like that.
After spending days inside inadequate shelters, crowds of Londoners barge their way into the city's underground stations and force the authorities to keep them open all night. Wealthier Londoners find other ways to escape the danger.
The class distinction went on even during the Blitz. So those who had the money or could get away to, out in the country somewhere went. And those who, those who had to stick it out, that was it. That was their bundle.
London's suburbs suffer far fewer bombs than the East End. For many children there, the war in the air is a source not of fear, but of fun.
I can remember watching dogfights on the way home from school, and I always hoped I would see a dogfight. Now there would be good lads putting their lives at risk, but to a youngster, that really was big stuff. I did many nights stand with my father outside the back door, overlooking this valley where we could see so much, 6 miles across and either side. There were no traffic lights, no shop lights, no background light of any sort, and the whole thing was just pitch black. The activity at night was at times intense. One could hear the German aeroplanes droning, although they were very heavily laden. And the searchlights would try to pick them up, and we were willing these searchlights to do just that. And indeed, if they did pick up a plane, which they did once or twice, it would shine up like a silver light in the searchlights, and they would all switch onto it. Then all hell would let loose, and they would fire these traces. For a 10-year-old, that was absolutely extraordinary. Now and again, and this is when my father got me back inside, you could hear a whir of the shrapnel, like a and it would hit a roof, and the tyre would slide down. And there was a lot of exchange of shrapnel swaps. And a shell base was a prized possession. A shell cap was a rare bird. And I had a good collection.
After 8 days of bombing, the RAF finally hits back. On September the 15th, it savages a big daylight raid. London's embattled inhabitants can at last see their own pilots tearing into the enemy. The dramatic victory forces the Luftwaffe to stop daytime raids on London. The bombers still come by night, but Londoners can now at least go to work in safety, and a new spirit begins to grow.
People never moan. They never moaned. They got on with what they had to do. They got up and went to work and come home from work and changed into a pair of trousers and old jumper and went down the shelter and got up from the shelter and went home and changed and went to work.
There was this kind of air of, I'm not going to give in to Hitler. I remember going across Westminster Bridge once and there was a terrific air raid on. And there was this thing coming down, obviously, quite near, because you would hear the whistling of this bomb, and loads of people threw themselves on the ground, which was an incredible, a sensible thing to do. But some of us didn't. And the attitude was, I'm not going to throw myself on the pavement for Adolf Hitler. That was an attitude, you know, there was this defiance, really.
We had a hell of a scrap over Portland, in which about 100 enemy aircraft were engaged. The Messerschmitt 110 whipped up in a stall turn, and I gave him a long burst. It fell over and got him a Messerschmitt 110's tail and sent it down in flames. The bomber crashed in the field. I leveled off. Suddenly there was a blinding flash on my port wing, and I felt a hell of a blow on my left arm, and then blood running down.
Dennis Whistler is a 20-year-old fighter pilot. Since May, he has been in the thick of the air war. Whistler serves at RAF Debden in Essex. When off duty, he mixes with the young women who work on the base.
The first time I met Dennis, I was driving a tractor, and he threw some sand in my engine and stopped it, and I made him start it, and that's the first time I remember seeing him. I said, you stopped it, you start it. So he did. He never really smiled properly because he had 2 teeth that he was ashamed of them. You know, he should have had them taken out. But he had his own way of smiling. They were such a handsome lot. It never occurred to me till much later, and somebody once said, but they were all so handsome. And I thought, yes, so they were. I didn't noticed it, you know, because they were all like that. I mean, there were budding romances all over the place. But we were always supervised, both the girls and the boys. You know, and it was all very proper. I mean, sometimes they held your hand and that was it, you know. Very exciting. Sometimes we went ballroom dancing, all very dignified, I might tell you. It was a chance to get together and talk and, I suppose, flirt, if you like. There were lots of flirtations, weren't there? But we had to be back by 10:15. Sometimes we got an extension to 10:30, which was absolutely fantastic. I suppose, in a way, you were afraid to go beyond the bounds, but some did. In fact, one I do know about that did, and she used to pinch everybody's boyfriends, and we could never understand how she did it until later I found out. A few years later.
Sunday the 29th of September. Did nothing during the day, but there was the usual band in the mess, and when they packed up, I completed the party at the sergeant's mess. Met Edith Heap, and fell in love with her at sight. I rather cut Margaret Cameron, and I'm not so popular with her as I was.
Apparently, he decided that he quite liked me. And he said, are you coming to the squadron dance? Because they were going to be moved to Martlesham, and they were having a sort of special dance. So I said, yes, we've been asked, don't have to worry about it. So when we came off duty, we all flood in, and he's waiting for me. And it just went from there, and I never got near the bar. And we danced, and then he said he wanted a photograph, so we went back to my billet and fetched a photograph. And they went off to Martlesham the next morning, arranged to write to each other every day, and meet when we could, which is what we did.
As Dennis Whistler and Edith Heap are dancing at RAF Debden, Hitler's bombers strike London once again.
I went to sleep on the settee underneath this ironing board, and my mother had got some sugar and rhubarb and was going to make some jam the next morning. And this was, for some reason or other, I knew was near me, this particular canister. At about 2 in the morning, I could hear shouting and people calling and bells and the fire brigade and others. And I suddenly realised I'm looking into the garden and there are no French windows, they've gone. And I could see through into next door. I still couldn't comprehend what had happened because there was a lot of dark. And I thought, I know where there's some sugar. I'll just have I didn't hear the bang, but obviously was awakened by it. And I reached down into this preserving pan to pick up some sugar and picked up a piece of brick and put that in my mouth and spat that out. My father was okay. My mother, who was lying next to him under the table, was hit by the middle wall, which came and just crushed her. I was carried out by a police inspector. I remember saying to the inspector that I knew what all this stuff in the road was called. It was called debris. I felt very proud of the fact that I could use that word and know what it was. Oh yes, he said, that's debris. And we were taken to this house opposite. My father, who went to the hospital and was there, told my mother had been killed. He came back to the house and his hair was standing straight up on end, just like it used to in the children's comics, with anyone who'd had a shock. And he said that she had died. And I still didn't really comprehend the immensity of that. So I kept, strange as it may seem, a stiff upper lip. I get more upset thinking about it all these years on than I did at the time. I pretended that nothing had happened. I did not get upset about it, although I knew I should have done. Maybe it would have been better had I done.
Wednesday the 30th of October. Pitters took over for me today and I went to meet Edith as soon as possible. My God, it seems to be the real thing this time.
When we were together, it was quite out of this world, quite literally. He was a delight. He was funny. He was terribly romantic. We used to laugh a lot and act the gay generally. It was something you don't see often. And perhaps war intensified it a bit. And every moment you're together is precious, you see. Women were new in the forces, and they were worried that things would get out of hand and we'd get pregnant and there'd be all sorts of mayhem. And they might have even thought it was bad for the boys, because they did say that they didn't like their pilots to get engaged in things because it destroyed their spontaneousness. They started to worry too much. And I think they were probably right, because they started being careful. And you can't be careful when you're a fighter pilot. You have to go in full throttle and not be worrying about some woman left at base.
Hitler extends his night bombing. Hull, Southampton, Liverpool, Bristol and Cardiff all suffer. On November the 14th, the Luftwaffe strikes Coventry. Teenage fireman Ted Wilson, back from London, faces a firestorm.
The whole place was like bonfire night. Sparks everywhere. And in a short space of time, I lost my eyebrows and eyelashes, all the hair under my steel helmet. That's all gone. Often I thought about my mum and dad, also my sisters and my brother. I knew that they would be in the Folly Lane tunnels underneath the railway. I know they thought of me and prayed for me during the night. I went to another part of the city to put out a small fire, and we were just clearing up when we heard that the Coventry Cathedral was on fire and it was burning pretty bad. And I felt really, really terrible at that time, because I'd already been on the cathedral twice and put sentries off. And now I knew that the incendiaries had gone in through the roof, the lead, and into the rafters, which were like matchsticks, and there wouldn't be much to save. It was at that moment that I did shed a tear, because the cathedral was my city. It was a symbol of our city. As a child, you was never called a Coventry kid until you'd been up the cathedral spire and had a look round. And the station officer, he said to me about 7:20. Go home if you like, Ted, I said, and see how your folk are.
On his way home, Ted Wilson hears that the tunnels in which his family are sheltering have been struck by bombs.
As I was walking down there towards the tunnels, there was two gentlemen at the other end of the tunnel. One of them, he walked towards me, and he put his arms around me and said, "Well done, son." In return, I just turned around and said to him, "Many happy returns of the day, Dad." It was his birthday. And that I'll never forget. Never forget that moment.
On the Atlantic Ocean, the Royal Navy is now desperately stretched. To help protect the convoys, it presses passenger liners into service and fits them with 19th century guns. 20-year-old Sam Patience is the quartermaster of the Jervis Bay.
The kind of ship I always wanted to be on, a big passenger liner or ex-passenger liner. She was then converted to an armed merchant cruiser. And but to me, to go aboard that and a big liner and be quartermaster, that was it, that was good. We were the protector of the convoy, and our job was to get the convoy safely over to England. We never anticipated we'd run up against a pocket battleship. And when she appeared on the horizon, we didn't even know what it was. And there were all kinds of speculation, blokes looking through the eyesights of the guns. Way on the horizon, you could just see the silhouette of it. And all of a sudden, crash. A full salvo come over, and that was it. We knew then it was a German battleship. Third salvo hit us from about, what, 25,000 yards, must have been 22, 25,000 yards. And our extreme range was only 10,000. Then the order was given for the convoy to scatter. They went to the right, starboard, and we went to the left. We placed ourselves in between the German warship and the convoy. In other words, to protect the convoy, to take all the fire, if whatever came over, and let the convoy get away. The shells were coming over. You could hear the shells, the whine of them, but you didn't know where they were going to land. First of all, the bridge got hit, or the radio control room. The ship was on fire, a bloke standing beside you were getting killed, burnt alive, and all this and that, and heads blown off. Absolute slaughter. It seems a suicidal mission at the time. I've heard this said to me before. But if we'd have run away, we'd have been cowards. Our object there was to protect that convoy, and that's what we did. We were just getting smashed to bits. And the navigator shouted to us, "Abandon ship, every man for himself." I couldn't swim. I thought, well, I've got to make a decision here. I either go down with the ship or get over the side. And I got hold of a ship's lifebuoy, and I went over the side and got away from the ship before she sank. While I was sliding over the side, I nearly severed all my hand off. All these fingers were hanging off. Didn't notice it at that time. Got in the water and were just paddling about for about an hour and a half. I thought I was strong enough to survive till the morning with the lifebuoy. But I would never have survived all night. It was so cold. It was bitter, bloody cold. And all of a sudden, this lifeboat came up. And it was the only boat that got away. I never even knew there was a boat got away. And I said, you know, take us aboard. And there was a bit of a hesitancy about me going aboard. Chuck that bloody lifebelt away. I said, no fear, I'm hanging on to it. But they dragged me aboard, and lifebelt and all. And we were drifting about for about an hour. And then all of a sudden, out of the smoke screen came the Swedish ship, the Sturholm. Magnificent.
Survivors of the armed merchant cruiser Jervis Bay were brought to a Canadian port by this Swedish steamer, herself one of the convoy attacked by a Nazi warship. These are some of the men who came away from that magnificent sea fight against impossible odds. In the suicidal fight to save the convoy, the sacrifice was not in vain, for 34 ships did escape.
Up until about 18 months ago, I used to be fighting the Germans every night in my bed. I was always being cornered, or they were always trying to get me somewhere or another. For a long time, I'm fighting, effing German bees and all this and that. And Rose used to wake me up. Come on, wake up, wake up, wake up. She used to know. She got used to it, you know. But the dreams, you know, they worn off now. So I must be mellowing with the years.
He said, when I next have some leave, could we spend it together, you see? And I said, yes, if you like. So anyway, we went to Cambridge. And we had dinner and chatted like mad, you know, like you do. And then he said, oh, I've got something I want to say to you. So, and we went up to my bedroom. Now, you never went into a bedroom with a man. It's definitely not allowed. I mean, society didn't allow it. And he sat on the bed, and I sort of leant against the dressing table, and he said, will you marry me? So I said, of course. So he went and got a bottle of champagne. And the man who ran the Red Lion brought it up and never said anything. I was quite surprised. Anyway, so we drank the champagne. And Dennis thought so much of me that he wasn't going to compromise me in any way. And off we went to our respective beds. It showed a great respect, which we had for each other. On the other hand, I could probably have been persuaded. Because if you know that somebody might not come back, are you going to miss the opportunity? Because you never get it again.
Just 6 months earlier, as Hitler's armies stormed through Europe, the world believed that Britain faced certain defeat. But the impossible has happened. The British people have rallied behind a maverick leader whose policy of total defiance appeared almost suicidal.
I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat.
For 200 extraordinary days, the world has seen that Hitler can be resisted and that fear can be overcome.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender.
He was dictating, and there was a terrific racket going on, bombing outside, and he suddenly said, Miss Holmes, sometimes he called me Miss Sherlock. It was a sort of tease, you know, Sherlock Holmes, you see. He said, are you frightened? Are you sure you're not frightened? And as I've said before, how could one possibly be frightened in the presence of that man? One never was.
Britain cannot win this war alone, but in 1940 she has refused to lose it. As the year closes and the country goes on fighting, still alone, those who have already struggled so hard to frustrate the Nazis must continue to risk their lives.
It was amazing that they managed to fight the way they did, because they must have been suffering from awful exhaustion. Sometimes an aircraft landed and the pilot just fell asleep over his controls. Didn't even taxi back, just stopped, and that was it. So the ground crews had to go and rescue him and bring them back. And they were that tired, and whenever they were off, and they used to just lie about down at dispersal, flat out asleep.
We went over to North Weald this morning and did 3 patrols, 2 of which were at 28,000 feet. I did 5.5 hours, and I'm so tired tonight. I'm going to bed early, but I shall be just as tired tomorrow morning.
In the operations room, Edith Heap and the other WAFs can hear every detail of the battle in the skies above.
There was a tally-ho, and then a lot of noise really, because they're all going in. And I didn't really hear anything actually until somebody said, there's a plane going down and there's no parachute. And that was all I heard. I thought, oh my God, it's Dennis, and I knew it. Eventually I went back and Bill was waiting for me, and she said, Edith, sorry. Anyway, she said, Dennis is missing. So I said yes and no. And they were very kind. And how... Nobody says much. But anyway, I was released from duty that night, and they gave me a fortnight's compassionate leave. I do wish we'd been married, that I do wish. I wouldn't have cared if it was 24 hours or 2 days or 3 weeks or 5 months. I do regret that. But there we go. I think we were very fortunate to meet. We wouldn't perhaps have met if there hadn't been a war. You're only a very small cog in a huge machine, really. But every little cog has to work, doesn't it? However little.